companies would start investing again and hiring again. So I do think the next few months are going to be really interesting to see what the Federal Reserve does, what the election will do. But right now, the job market is pretty soft and becoming more challenging for people that are looking for work.
How can you turn your passions into a fulfilling career? Join us on today's episode of Seek, Go, Create, the Leadership Journey, where we sit down with Joanne Bily, the Duchess of Labor. Joanie, an acclaimed employment expert, author, and motivational speaker, offers her expertise in career advancement through her book, Dive In Deep, and her transformative deep process, Design, Experience, Execute, and Persevere. As a regular commentator on networks like Fox Business and a seasoned keynote speaker, Joanie guides individuals on navigating and thriving in the dynamic job market. Joanie, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Great to talk with you here. I was just kind of chuckling at that last statement there, dynamic job market. That's kind of an understatement. We'll talk about that in just a little while. But before we get too much further, I love the intro. Great thing. I love this title, Duchess of Labor. I'm going to ask you about that later. But if you're just out and about and you bump into somebody and they ask you what you do, what's your usual answer?
Well, the quick answer is I connect great people with great jobs. And I think that's kind of a simple way to describe what I do, but I've been in the employment, staffing, and recruiting industry going on 30 years. It's hard to believe. I fell into this career, but I just absolutely love this industry and this business because it's all about connecting people with either their first job or their next job, or really helping them on their career path of what do they want to do next. And I also get the benefit of working with our customers and clients who are looking for talent and really need solutions when they're thinking about hiring their workforce, structuring their workforce. So that's kind of the gist of what I do. And I've just been fortunate to have such a wonderful career in this industry. It's led me to a lot of things that I never expected I would do, but it's been very rewarding for me.
Do you think that most people out there understand when someone says they're in the employment industry? Do they get that? Does it make sense? Does it click for people?
No, I think they understand what that means because I can tell you my family, when I first started at this and said, I'm in the staffing industry, they really didn't know, like, okay, well, what does that mean? So that's why I like to say I connect great people with great jobs or great companies with great talent. It's all about those connections. And, I have found a lot of fulfillment in this industry because of that. To your point, a lot of people don't know what that really means.
Well, maybe after we go through a few things here, it might be clearer to people, but you've used the word multiple times, connections, or I'll use the word connector. If we look at personality profiles, strength finders, things like that, connector is a big strength. Is that something that you mentioned you fell into this industry, but was it something that pulled you? But were you a connector all along? Have you always been a connector?
Yeah, I guess my personality has always been someone that enjoys meeting new people, having conversations. I also just have this drive in me to want to help individuals. And so, though I fell into this industry, I was going to college for a social work career, studying health and human services. My mother actually was a nurse and then a therapist. And I kind of was following in her footsteps a little bit in the sense that I wanted to help other people. What was interesting is I never thought I'd end up in business. And I never knew how much I would love business and the economy and just the whole economics, right, of running a business. So I really feel very fortunate that I had an opportunity, right out of college to take a job that was called an employment counselor. And so I thought it was going to be more of a counseling job. But truly, what it was a recruiting role where I would interview and recruit people and then I would place them in jobs. And it just has turned into a 30-year career for me of learning a tremendous amount, right, about business and pricing and gross margins and operating expenses and how to build a successful business and drive profit. And I've loved all aspects of it. I have enjoyed every aspect of it. But ultimately, it still comes down to, I think it was always in me that I wanted to help people. And that's what it really stemmed from.
So it's interesting, and I think it's quite a gift when we are attempting to. We'll talk about this when we get into the formula I think that you have for your book. It's so interesting that we will attempt to at a young age say that I am going to be a blank social worker.
Yeah.
Engineer was mine, by the way. Actually, mine was teacher and a coach. And I say this on almost every episode, but then I found out one day in junior and high school how much money my parents made as teachers.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, ooh, I don't like that very much. I think I need to do something else. So engineer, but I don't think I was really wired to be an engineer. And it just blessed me to later find out I could actually coach and do things, but still have that foundation.
Yeah.
Were you, going back to what we mentioned earlier, where people are kind of, I hate to use the strong word of ignorant or not knowledgeable about the staffing industry. Would you have been in that category when you stepped into it? Would you have been one that if someone says, by the way, you seem to be wired for staffing or, temporary service or helping someone find their ideal job or helping companies, would you have been going, what are you talking about?
I didn't have any wisdom. To be perfectly frank with you, I really didn't know much about the industry or the model. It was something that was pretty foreign to me. My growing up, I think I probably had the mindset of, okay, I could be a nurse or be a lawyer or a teacher, like those were professions that I could understand and at least relate to or think, is this something I'd want to consider being? But I never said, oh, I want to be a recruiter or I want to be someone that works in the staffing industry because I didn't know about it. And I think a lot of people don't know about the industry and the wonderful work that this industry does and really makes a difference in
Mm-hmm.
people's lives. So I did not have the wisdom about it. And I am blessed that I kind of did fall into it and ended up on this path.
Okay, I think it's going to be fun later when we start talking about how people's careers develop and how you can craft and do your own. And we've both now said,
Yeah.
we sort of know how ours came to be. Do you find that people that go into this industry, and our buddy Mike Bayer introduced us, and he and I have talked a little bit about this industry, and I skirted it some years ago when he and I were doing some projects together. Do you find that people go into it with that, we'll call it a heart to help others like you seem to be on that path? Or are they more, because I do know there's financial benefit and reward greatly for people that are in this industry also. And I'm not anti either one of those, but what is your experience? Do you see people kind of more one way than the other that go into the specific industry that you're in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say that this industry, I think people fall in love with it once they get into it. They might enter it thinking, oh, this could be a good financial opportunity for me. And in all fairness, even when I think back to being right out of college, I looked at, okay, a counselor job versus the employment counselor, which was the recruiter role was going to pay me a little bit more, right? And so I'm newly out, have an apartment, a car, off of mom and dad's payroll. So I took the job that paid more. And I think maybe people get into it, thinking that this could be financially rewarding. But I think what keeps people in it is not only the ability to earn a good income, but you truly fall in love with the industry if it pulls on your heart. You do have to have that, I think, passion for it and find purpose in your work. It definitely has kept me. Like I can't imagine doing something else or leaving the industry other than maybe real estate, because I've always loved real estate and I've had fun with that over the years, and I've invested in a lot of properties. Kind of that's been a side interest of mine, but I can't imagine truly ever doing anything else full time than helping people. And I've even volunteered in our industry, which led me to becoming a board member of the American Staffing Association, which really is the largest association for the industry. And I have the honor this year of being the chair of the board for the American Staffing Association. So again, kind of comes back to I would have never imagined that I would have, been on a board of directors or then been the chairperson of the board when I started out, in this industry, to think that that's the role I'm in today. And it's just been so rewarding. And I feel like it's given back to me more than I've ever could give to it.
So somewhere along the way, you were able to obtain, or you inherited, or whatever, the title Duchess of Labor. And curious, I think I know where it came from. However, I just love for you to tell me the Duchess of Labor. How did that come to be?
Yeah, it is kind of a funny story. So one of the things that I started doing, gosh, about maybe 15 years ago, was I started speaking about the employment market and talking about labor trends and workforce data, what's happening with the job market, with unemployment, with wages. And again, kind of coming back, this conversation is kind of fun because it takes me down memory lane. But, here I was, someone that went to school for social work, wasn't taking the business classes or the, analysis classes, but I really dove into understanding the data and analyzing the data. And then I started speaking about the data and what was happening with the job market. And that led to me ultimately being asked to be on television, on the national news, and had the chance to be on Fox News, Fox Business, CNN. I did, just different stints at many different networks where I would come on and talk about the job market. So I was known as a labor market expert. Well, one night at home, my daughter, we were getting ready for dinner and she was studying history at the time, and she was learning all about the Knights of Labor and really the movement that they had in the United States for putting, labor laws in place to really protect workers, to protect child workers, to get more women in the workforce. And I had never really heard of it. I'm like, the Knights of Labor. And so she said to me, yeah, Mom, it's like, like you're the Duchess of Labor. You're doing everything from volunteering with the American Staffing Association, putting people to work. And she said the Knights of Labor, did this work like over 100 years ago. So my daughter actually gave me the title Duchess of Labor.
All right, good. And so it's officially unofficial, sort of.
It's definitely unofficial, but hey, when your daughter gives you a title like that, I said, I'm taking that. So we had some fun with that and, have used it through social media and just kind of took off.
All right. So one more, and it might be a tough question more about Joanie. And then I want to go macro. And then I want us to, as we finish up, allow plenty of time to do micro and talk about design, experience, execute, and persevere for the individual. But what is the thing that you really enjoy the most out of all of that? Because when I see someone with a lot of things, so one of the questions that comes to my mind is like, what gives them the most energy and joy of all of those things that they do? So I'm putting that on you and kind of forcing you to say, what's the one thing that you really, really, really dig the most right now?
Well, it's easy to answer personally because The thing that comes to mind first is I'm a mom to two great kids that I just adore. And that's been the greatest joy, truly, in my life. And they're both in college now. So it's also fun to help them with their college experience, what they're studying, getting internships, and helping them get on the right career path. So that definitely is an easy thing to answer. From a professional standpoint, if I think about all the things that I've accomplished, what has meant the most, or probably been the most rewarding, has really been just being recognized for giving back to communities, for helping people with careers, having someone come to me and say, "You really made a difference in my life. You coached me, or you gave me great advice." It would all boil down to that one thing, that I was able to help someone. And be
Mm,
recognized for that has meant a lot.
I like that. A couple of episodes ago, we had someone that talked, they used the word significance quite a bit. And then it kind of tailed off into impact.
Yes.
And I would I wouldn't have guessed it, but I would have sort of expect that from someone who started off life considering being a social worker,
Mhm.
that has done all of these things. You're handed microphones, you're behind cameras and things like that. But it still boils down to you want to make that
You want
impact. And
Yeah, you want to make the impact. Recently I gave a speech as a keynote, and I was in front of, I would say, maybe about 1,500 people in the auditorium. And I kind of felt like it wasn't my best speech. It was good, but I was kind of beating myself up about it after. I'm like, gosh, I wish I delivered it a little bit stronger. It didn't come across exactly the way I had envisioned it. But anyway, people are always nice. Oh, you did a great job. It was great. Da, da, da. I go to the airport. I get on the train, that takes you in between the terminals. And there's a gentleman that's kind of standing a few people away. And he said, "Excuse me." He said, "Joanie, I heard you speak at the conference today." And he said, "I just want to let you know that your message really resonated with me. And it was something that I needed to hear. And I have been holding back from making a decision, and listening to you today just reassured me that this is what I need to do." And it completely changed how I felt about that speech. Even it wasn't like I just thought, "Oh, I could have done better." And then here I had someone, and I was so like taken back, and I just said, "Oh, that means the world to me." And it comes back to your point, Tim. It was that if you can have an impact and help someone, that's, the greatest gift, to me as well, is just that, oh, I made a difference, right, for someone. So that, I really do believe in making an impact. And I think that's a key to being successful in life. If you feel like you're making an impact, you have purpose in your work, you will be successful.
yeah, and what's fascinating to me, I think I'm sort of wired a little bit. It's the reason why I like to coach so much, because it's more like instant feedback
Mm-hmm.
when I've spoken, even with the podcast and things like that. Sometimes it's either delayed the feedback that you get from like the guy that you bumped into on the train, or you never get it.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of had with my soul had to just get to this place where I believe that I'm doing what God wants me to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to just put forth the effort, persevere, and execute, like we're going to talk about here in just a moment, and not be concerned about the results. That's a tough one for me because I like to look at the numbers. I like to see things. I like to know if we do a podcast episode, what does it lead to and all that. But some of that you never know. So I guess I look at you and I go, here's someone who's spreading a wide net. She's got a lot of things, and a lot of it, you probably never hear it, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think accepting that is important for all of us, because sometimes we won't hear all of it. Like, it's great that I was able to write a book, and I've had many people reach out to me and say, "This message really resonated with me, and thank you so much. I got so much from it." But you're right, not everyone's going to do that. You don't know everyone you touch, but you hope, that you do make an impact,
Yeah.
and just have to accept that, like you said, doing God's work, and hopefully on the right path to help other people live their best life and achieve greater success because of that.
I want us to go from what we were talking about, your background and all, which I love. That's the reason I like doing these type interviews, because I like connecting and talking to people a little more. But I also love talking about the big picture. And if I've got someone with the experience and background in the labor, staffing, jobs market, someone who's on news shows and all, I would like to educate myself and others with what we need to know, what's going on, what are some things we need to look for. So let's do this first. Let's go big picture. And I know you look at a lot of things. I don't usually like to timestamp these episodes, but unfortunately, I think we may need to. We are recording this in early August 2024. In the United States, there's an election almost 3 months out, which impacts a lot of this kind of stuff. And so, if I were to ask you, where are we at now with the labor market? Is that too broad a question? Can you respond to that? What would you say if I just said, just tell me what you're thinking and where we're at?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned before when we started the podcast, I think we called it a dynamic labor market. And unfortunately, it's not a dynamic labor market today.
Static? So it would be static?
Yeah, it's pretty static. It has been declining slowly, but I would say over the last 2 years, there has been much softness in the overall labor market. After the pandemic, we certainly rebounded and the labor market came back very strong. The economy came back very strong. There were more jobs being added. There were more jobs than there were available people. That really drove wages up. We started to see people really come back into the workforce, and all sectors across the board, from services to manufacturing, construction. Job growth was happening really in every sector. And of course, healthcare was probably the strongest sector. Fast forward to today, what we've been seeing is that the job growth is really coming from three main sectors in the United States. We're seeing job growth continue in healthcare, leisure and hospitality. So people are still out there traveling and spending money, which we see in the consumer spending numbers as well. And then we've seen the government sector add jobs. So those have been the three sectors that have added jobs. So the headline number for the overall job market still looks good. We're seeing, 200,000 jobs created, 300,000 jobs created. But unfortunately, if you dig into the data, and this is where I get my Duchess of Labor hat on, but a little bit of a data geek, and you start, kind of peeling back all these numbers, what's happening is there are many sectors that are not adding jobs. They're actually declining. Manufacturing has been very hard hit over the last year. The industry that I work in, the temporary staffing industry, has actually been losing jobs for 2 years. And so what that means is employers are tightening their purse strings and they're saying, we need to cut back. And one of the first things that they will cut back on when things get tough is they will let their temporary workers go first. And so we've been seeing this kind of trickle along, and it really hasn't been a great job market for the past year. And we're now seeing unemployment, start to climb. So we're up to 4.3% unemployment. That was just released for the first Friday in August. We just got that data point out. And there's some concerns around these numbers. Now, this could mean are we going into a recession? It could mean that maybe the Federal Reserve will look at the labor market and say, you know what, we're not seeing as much movement in wages and unemployment's rising. We really need to lower interest rates. And that could quickly turn things around, because then companies would start investing again and hiring again. So I do think the next few months are going to be really interesting to see what the Federal Reserve does, what the election will do. But right now, the job market is pretty soft and becoming more challenging for people that are looking for work.
Very good. There's a few questions I have that might border on the cynical. So I'm just going to go ahead and telegraph that right now. My first one would be the methodology for coming up with the numbers. Do you, in the role you're in, have confidence in numbers that are created, or are they're just our numbers and we have to go with them? And or maybe even give me a range on how confident. There are times that I am not. This is going to kind of show my political hand, so I want to be careful here. There are times I don't trust things that come from the government. I'm not saying that they're doing it maliciously. Sometimes they might be. But so what are your thoughts when you look at these numbers? Are you like so confident when you get these reports?
Yeah, no,
Or
I'm glad you're asking me that because I'm going to be brutally honest and say I'm not confident in these numbers. And every month, the government revises the numbers that go back for the last 2 months, and they're always adjusting them downward. So I do question it. It amazes me that when the numbers come out, billions of dollars are probably traded on Wall Street and based on what these numbers say, knowing that next month they're going to get revised anyway, either up or down. But lately, they're always revised down. So I don't have a tremendous amount of confidence in those numbers. However, what I do trust is I'm on the front lines of employment. And I would tell you, I actually think it's worse than what the numbers are reporting. I think the economy has been more challenging for the last 2 years, but it hasn't always showed up in the employment data. And that could be for a number of reasons. These challenges have existed through, whether you have a Republican in office or a Democrat in office, it's the same challenges with the data. So I do think there's questions around that.
very, very good. That was a healthy response. And I think I'm glad I asked that question. My follow up that is, again, maybe my second cynical question is that depending on who's in charge in Washington, they will take credit or be faulted for some of these numbers that we've already said that we may not exactly be extremely confident in. And with 30 years in the industry, this is not pointing to one, unfortunately, in the United States. For those listening overseas, we only have two parties here. I'm getting to the place where I do think there's some policies and things like that impact, but I'm not sure that there's that much control with the person that's sitting in the White House or things like that. And maybe the question is, what are some things that do impact at that level? Maybe some big sweeping policies or tax policies or things like that. What's the answer, Joanie? What should we be doing right now?
I wish, yeah. No,
just take that sort of weird comment that I made and do something with it to make it sound better.
No, where you're going is a great question. And I think we certainly need to figure that out, right? To grow our overall economy and our job market. I can tell you from my last 30 years where I've seen the most growth has been a few things. One is tax credits. If the government is giving employers payroll tax credits, anything to kind of stimulate job growth, it usually leads to some pretty big growth. Employers are incentivized to hire and keep people on their payrolls. So I will tell you that does work. It does boost the economy. Employers will invest in their businesses and having investments too for small business to accelerate some of that can really make a difference. So I do believe that those policies work. In addition, I will say there are other things that do create job growth, some of them good, some of them bad. Even the pandemic, which had a negative impact right away, I think a lot of the policies that were put in place coming out of that led to a boom in the job market. And we started to really add a tremendous amount of jobs and kind of get the US back up and running better than it was before. So it can almost be like a crisis or a war. There are certain things that do stimulate growth that can be significant milestones. But overall, tax credits and policies to employers can be a big boost.
Very good. All right. So let's talk briefly about technology. And the one that pops into my head is AI.
Mm.
And AI seems to be the current technology hot button. We've had other things in the past, and with the experience that both of us have, we can go back and go, yeah, we've heard this before. Yeah, we've heard this before. But maybe just technology in general or specifically AI. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? Is it an exciting thing? Is it a concern? What says Joanie?
Well, I will say that overall, AI is going to help the majority of people do their jobs better. And I do think it's going to drive productivity and efficiencies for business. It will eliminate some jobs. There's no doubt about it. And it will impact certain industries more than others. You know, we see what's happening even with writing and what's happened in the media industry. They don't need as many writers and editors. And that's been kind of an evolution, but there's been a big impact to the media industry over the course of time. And AI is a big driver in that. But it definitely, I mean, it's helping doctors and nurses do their jobs better. It's changing, the ways people work in call centers and assisting, like a call assist makes a difference. So it will eliminate some of those lower level jobs and it'll change, right? Even engineering, we were talking about you and your engineering background, like it will have impacts certainly on the IT industry and engineering industry where we can leverage AI to really do a lot of the work, but you're still going to need people to oversee it and really make sure that it's correct. And that's very important. If you just look at what happened with the IT global outage that we just experienced a few weeks ago, someone kind of dropped the ball there. And we can't let that happen.
Well, because some people are sitting here thinking this is an old reference that, Skynet, from the Terminators taking over and will. No, I don't quite see that. Just an example of a small little project we've got here. This podcast. I had a little over a year ago, 2, maybe 3 contractors that were working and helping. And now I've got one person that helps a little bit. And then everything else is, I mean, a lot of the heavy lifting with editing and, transcripts, all of those things are being done with, I like to call it machine learning. AI is a little bit of a misnomer because it's not technically AI yet, I don't think. But anyway, just last big picture question. What is something that you're looking out over the horizon and you are very excited about? And then what secondary, and you might have already addressed some of these, what are you concerned about? And you could flip the order if you want to end with a more positive. So what is Joanie super excited about and what concerns are about the current labor market?
Well, when I look at kind of the horizon, I will say the one thing I really want to get us past, not that you ever want to fast forward time because you need to enjoy being in that present moment, but I'm ready to get the election over with, regardless of who's in office. The news cycle's very difficult to listen to. I think there's just a lot of negativity, right, coming back on both sides. So as I look at the horizon, I'm going to be very excited that we get beyond that. And I also think that that will be good for the job market either way, because whoever's in office needs to make this, the economy and inflation a top priority, that needs to be fixed. You see in any poll out there, that's the number one issue for Americans is dealing with inflation. And we see it with the job market where wages have gone up over the last few years, but they're starting to cap out. Companies can't afford to increase wages anymore. So I think we need to kind of get through that cycle. As I look at what I'm most excited about is it will be interesting to see what machine learning, AI, robotics, what that will do for the overall economy. And I'm also excited that we see a tremendous amount of construction and manufacturing plants throughout the United States. That is happening. And so I do believe there is going to be a renaissance almost of manufacturing coming back to the US, and that will have a very big positive impact in the overall labor market, for America. But that is taking some time because they're just being built now. But we'll start to see that in 2025 and 26 and beyond.
I have some clients that I work with. I work with leadership teams of organizations and work with them on strategy and things. And I have clients that are they're around the construction industry. I'll say it that way. And it was warehouses for a while. Now it's data centers that are going up everywhere. And I do think there'll be some employment around the data centers. That also tells us a little bit about some trends we just talked about. That's important. All right. Another hard pivot here. We've been flying at 40, 50,000 feet, and I'm going to bring us down to ground level. And I want to read the tagline for your book. That is dive in deep. And we're going to go through at least a few of the 4 items related to deep in just a moment. But it's strategies to advance your career, find balance, and live your best life. That's what everybody wants, right?
I hope so, right? We all want to live our best life, and we sometimes have to get out of our own way in order to do that. But just as we started talking about the podcast, the reason I really wrote the book was to try and help provide guidance and advice to people that might be struggling, whether it's in their career, are they in the right career, or do they want to make a pivot into a different industry or a different role? And then how do you do that? Which is, I think sometimes a bit overwhelming, but could be holding somebody back. If they don't make that move, if they're not doing the work that they really love, are they living their best life? Probably not. I'd look at that. So that's really what the book is about. And I broke up the book into the 4 strategies. The deep process, is all about how do you design kind of the right career for you and really think about what are your interests, what are your goals, what are you good at, how do you find purpose in your work, how do you play to your strengths, the gifts, that God has given you. And so that's really all in that design phase. And then when you start to figure that out, of course, you need to gain experience in that field and in that industry to help, move yourself forward and advance. And I talk about moving up, it's whether it's moving up the corporate ladder, moving up spiritually, it doesn't always have to be a promotion, right? But that you're really finding fulfillment and success from your work and you gain that experience. And then it's about executing, which is putting in the hard work to make it happen, following through. So lots of tips around that. And then we all know there's going to be roadblocks. The name of the book is Dive in Deep. I think of diving in a pool. And sometimes that can be a little scary, right? If you're going off a big diving board or diving into a new pool of work or trying something new. And there's going to be times where you may make a belly flop in life. And it might hurt, and some might sting more than others, but you're going to be okay. There's water in the pool, and you can get coaching and advice and refine your technique and continue to keep diving in. And that's all about perseverance, right? Not giving up, going after your dreams and ambitions so that you can make it happen. And really just try to encourage everyone to pursue their dreams and go after what they really want to do in life, and don't hold back, don't have regrets. So that was really the premise of the book and kind of how the book's designed. It was really a fun project for me to do.
So I love all that. We're going to cover, and I actually might ask you to go a little bit deeper into one of those items there. But the question I've had, you mentioned you've got two children. I don't know if girls, boys, whatever, in college.
Yeah.
And we've got our children a little bit older than that. They're kind of out and getting started. And one of the things that my wife and I will often say is that we consider ourselves decently bright, knowledgeable stuff. And we're not really sure what to tell our children as far as entering the job market, work, business, whatever. So, and you don't have to get personal here, but I'm just curious, what are you telling your children right now that are in college? I mean, did you say, here's a book, you need to read it, read this book, and then come back to me, I'll fill you in or something? You know, I'm the Duchess of Labor, right? You gave me that title, but no, what are you telling them? And, what can you share that you're coaching the young person? And then I'm also in a little while going to ask about the person who's more advanced in their career that might be wanting to do something different. But let's talk starting out almost like with your children.
Yeah. Well, and I have volunteered and spoken at high schools and middle schools on this topic because I am so passionate about it. And what I tell students and what I tell my own children is you really need to find a career that aligns with your interests, your God given talent, with opportunities that you feel like are going to be fulfilling and where you feel like you're making an impact. And it's going to be different for every single person. We're all on our own path. There's no right way or wrong way or one way for everyone to go. You really need to reflect on what you want to do with your life and what skills do you have that you can leverage, and try. And even with going through to get their bachelor's degree, where both of my kids are right now, it was trying to set them up with degrees that will also give them some flexibility. It doesn't mean like, okay, you have to just be an engineer and you can't do anything else. I have two very different children. It's a challenge, right? To say like, okay, what works for one isn't going to work for the other. But I am excited that I think they're both on a path that they will get degrees in a field that they will end up doing something with. They love the industry. They love the classes they're taking. And sometimes it comes back to that, like students, but figure out what are the classes that you're really good at, that what things come naturally to you. Dive into that, and see what opportunities you have in that area to pursue. But you have to try different things. I think internships are so important. I think every college and university should require them and have ways where their students can get opportunities to gain experience. I can't tell you how many times I have spoken with college graduates that have come out, worked so hard, got their degree, get their first job in the field, and they really don't like the work. And then they have to think about, what am I going to do next? So getting experience is so important. Those internships and summer jobs, all of those things are really, really important.
And a really bad formula is when they have debt for that education that they've gotten for the work now. I was real fortunate when I was at Georgia Tech. I was able to co-op. And it was like, you go to school a quarter, then you work a quarter. And I was working for, at that time, Georgia Power. And I realized early on that I did not want to be an electrical engineer. Part of my journey has always been doing things and going, that's not it. and
Yeah.
then making an adjustment and change. So, another kind of big question for young people, you mentioned both of your children are in college. My father was very involved with vocational education. We had a lot of conversations when he was still alive. He passed recently, that he really believes we are driving too many people into college.
Mhm.
I, I don't know if you have any insight on this, but I'm a big believer, and I think we've gotten away from the trades, the plumbers, electricians, apprenticeships, working with someone. Any thoughts or responses when I bring that up? Oh, we sending too many people to college? Maybe that's the question.
Well, so there, I'm going to give you both sides. One, when I look at unemployment, unemployment is at across the board 4.3%. But if you look at, let's say, someone that doesn't have a high school diploma, it's just jumped up to almost 7%. If you look at someone that has a college degree, it's lower than the national average of 4.3. It's down to about maybe 3.5% unemployment. So there is something to be said. Having a college degree really can help you get gainfully employed and lead to work and participate in the labor force. However, I don't think we have enough people going into the trades. And it does come back to the point, right, where college is not going to be for everyone. And there may be some people that would be better off going through an electrical program, becoming an electrician, or, becoming a plumber or working in construction. There are some great jobs, six-figure incomes if you have the experience in the trades. So, and it comes down to, is this the type of work that you're really good at? You have a mind for it, you have a craft, a talent, and you can make a great living in it. So I do think we should have more people going into the trades. I'm also a daughter of an electrician who had a very long, successful career as an electrician, and he loved what he did. And he went through the apprentice program. And my father was someone that did go to college, and it really wasn't for him. Where he found what he was passionate, what he enjoyed doing, was when he became an apprentice in the electrical field and then ultimately became an electrician. So you got to find your path and kind of figure out what's going to be that right path for you.
We recently spoke to someone and they said, and you know what's interesting? They didn't do it apologetically, but it was almost, it wasn't as excited when they said their son was interested in possibly becoming a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad's family were all mechanics. I didn't get that gene, but
Right.
but I guess one of the things I would love for us to see is to equalize the honor and respect for someone who decides to do something like that
Mm-hmm.
versus, you're not going to college. I mean, especially again because of the whole debt thing and all of that. So anyway, I don't know that we won't solve that here, but thoughts?
Well, I agree with you 100%. And we do somehow need to normalize that because there are great opportunities and we don't have enough people going into the trades.
Right. All right. So what I heard for younger people was attempt to get a lot of experience trying a lot of different things. Sometimes that's easy to do, sometimes it's tough, but I love that thought. All right, now let's jump to the person who's been, maybe they got a degree, they got out, they started working somewhere and they've been there 10, 15, 20 years and they have either hit the wall or they've hated it for 10 years or they want to do something different. They are just saying, I can't picture doing this for another 10, 15, 20 years or something like that. So talk to that person, give them some tips. You could pull from some of the things from the book if you want to, but what can you coach that person to do?
No, it's a great question. And that could be a really challenging time for someone. I do talk about this in my book and give specific examples of people that I worked with. I had a gentleman come to me one time and he really seemed depressed. He had spent his education and his first part of his career in the accounting industry, and he just was not fulfilled and didn't feel like he was making an impact. But at the same time, he now owned a house, had a mortgage, had little kids. And it's like, how do you pivot from here? And I think you need to take a very, very thoughtful approach when you're thinking about possibly making a change. And I do talk about that kind of, and even steps and questions you can ask yourself in the book, but really had to think about, okay, let's go back. What were even the classes that you loved back in college? And what parts of your job do you really enjoy? And what are you really good at, interested in? And kind of like work through a plan of thinking about all of those things. And from there, I think you have to start thinking about, okay, if I was going to make a change, where could I take the skills that I have now, and how do I transfer those skills into a different industry and into a different career where I can, kind of port that with me, but get myself on a path, in a new industry or in a new field. Using your network is so important, especially for people that are a little bit further down in their career. They have the advantage of having a larger network and really networking with people and figuring out who might be in an industry or in a career that you're interested in, and leveraging them as a mentor or a coach. Hiring somebody like you, Tim, I mean, having a coach, it really can be extremely helpful if you're at that point, right? You have a career and you want to make a pivot. How are you going to do that? I would highly recommend getting a coach, an executive coach, to kind of help you through that process.
Yeah, I actually spoke to someone yesterday that was in a role. He didn't hate it, but it didn't fuel him. And when he said, "This is what I do, blah, blah, blah," but then I've got a ministry where I did this. And I told him, your voice tone just changed totally when you describe those two. But he also knows that he needs to be doing, he's called. God wants him in that business role, but he's still doing the ministry. So I do think, and maybe that's where the perseverance, I think that you sometimes just need to stick it out. You're supposed to be somewhere, even if it may not seem fun. And sometimes people just need to change their attitude. Truthfully, they just need to kind of shift that. I think the thing that's bothersome to me, and Joanie, I don't know if we have the answers for this. It really bugs me when people feel financially handcuffed, like they've invested so much into a role or a career or whatever, and they've got, like you mentioned, the house, the mortgage, the car payments, all that kind of stuff, and they just say, "Oh, I'd love to, be a chef. I've always wanted to be a chef. I'd love to go to Cordon Bleu and get trained, and then be a pastry chef."
But I'm sure that's a real scenario for someone.
My wife would have loved that. She didn't know that existed when she was in college and all that. They don't feel like they could do it for financial. To me, I'll chime in with something practical, is spend less than you make, put some money away, and maybe get in a position where you could take a sabbatical for 6 months and experiment with some stuff. I think that's cool. I love sabbatical, or all for taking a few months and exploring, testing, going, nope, I need to go back. And I've seen people come back into their job with a renewed vigor that they never had before.
Oh, no, such great advice, and would back that up 110%. I think you got to find a way. The old saying, when there's a will, there's a way. And, maybe being a little bit more fiscally responsible, save a little bit more, but give yourself those opportunities. Don't look back 20 years from now and have regrets that you didn't try something, that you didn't take the sabbatical and go try working as a pastry chef. And who knows what that could have led to, right? So don't have regrets. It does kind of come back to my book as well, but really try to encourage people, dive in, give it a chance. Even if you make that belly flop, it's okay. Better to have tried than, to not try it. Better to try and fail, but to never try at all. And I really do believe that people that take chances and risks and go after what they are passionate about get the biggest rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to caution people, though, be careful. You could end up living in an RV, traveling the world, no possession, stuff like that. You could be a nomad, or Someone called me a hobo recently. I said, hobo? I said, I don't like that term, hobo. What do you really want people to take away from your book? I'm going to encourage people to get it and go through the structure and the system and all that. But what do who would you say it's for, and what do you want people to really take away from it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I do believe this book can be helpful to students, but it can also be helpful to people that are later in their careers. So it is very general. It has a lot of advice on how do you take your career to the next level and how do you achieve the goals and your dreams that you are aspiring to. Maybe you haven't reached a certain point or there's something new you want to achieve. So I do think it could be for anyone. As a good friend told me, her 80-year-old mother read it and loved the book. That made me kind of chuckle. I didn't write it for the 80-year-old person, but she really enjoyed it. But the one thing that I really hope I inspire people to do is to take those chances and to pursue their goals and their ambitions of what they really want to do, the things that are deep down important to them. I want to encourage people to find that path and find a way to dive into that, because otherwise it kind of comes back to what I mentioned before. I don't want people to have regrets that they didn't try something, that they didn't try a new industry, that they didn't try that next job, that maybe they didn't become a mentor or a coach to someone else younger. Whatever it may be, go for it. Don't hold yourself back.
Very good. Joanie, where can people find you and, get the book? I'm guessing Amazon, but where do you want people to go if they go, I need to connect with Joanie? Tell us where to go. We'll include it down the links, and I've got one more question and we're done.
All right. Well, it is easy to connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is www.joaniebily.com, and you can send me a message through the website as well. But I appreciate promoting the book. I have donated all my proceeds of the book to Women in Leadership, a scholarship program with the American Staffing Association. So thank you for the promotion of the book as well. I appreciate that.
Very good. All right. Thanks. Make sure that you connect with Joanie in the areas and places that she mentioned. Joanie, we're seek, go, create, those three words. And I'm going to allow you, as my final question, to choose one of those words and why it just resonates with you, means more to you currently. Seek, go, or create.
Well, it's so hard, Tim, to just pick one because I love the whole concept. But I'm going to pick go because I want to encourage people to dive in, right? Go. And maybe it's even before you're creating something, but you got to try and pursue your dreams. So that's the one that resonates with me the most, but I love them all.
Thank you, Joanie. I appreciate it. Make sure you get the book. Dive in deep. Strategies to advance your career, find balance, and live your best life. I appreciate you being here, Joanie. Thanks for this conversation. I'm also thankful for all of those that have listened in. We have new episodes here at Seek, Go, Create every Monday on YouTube and on all your podcast platforms. We appreciate people commenting and sharing, giving us ratings, all types of things there. So thank you for that. Until next time, continue being all that you were created to be.